So did I manifest moving abroad? In this video, I'm gonna tell you my story of moving all by myself to a different country. The whole process took me 1 year from the decision to getting a working permission. So let's get into it. So a little background story. Initially, I wanted to move to Paris because in the past I would go to Paris every 2 months and I really felt like home there. I fell in love with French and the French culture. And on top of that, I also never really saw myself where I was at the moment, which is in Moscow, Russia. So I started looking into different ways to move to France. And through work, I had a friend who lived in New York at that moment, and I just wanted to call her and ask her how she did the whole thing, her experience of moving to a different country. I just wanted to hear someone's story. So I called her and we talked, and I told her that I actually always, my whole life since I was 12 years old, I always really wanted to visit New York. It was my dream city. I even had a huge New York view poster on my wall in my room. So she was like, why don't you come to New York first for vacation and just see how it is, see if you like it. And then with this goal accomplished, you will work on your French documents or whatever. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And so from there, every single thing started working out like crazy. Literally, it felt like it was written somewhere in the book that I was supposed to be doing all this. So basically, before that, a few years before that, I applied for American visa, for American tourist visa, and I was declined. I didn't have a job at that moment. It was a little complicated. Also, I was trying to get a visa together with my ex-boyfriend, and it just didn't work out. So this time I was like, okay, I'm gonna apply for this visa again. I don't know if they're gonna give it to me, but we'll see. So I did apply. I got approved immediately. And the funny story is that before going to my appointment, I read a forum about interviews and everything, and someone literally said, there's an officer who is always drinking tea from their white cup. Make sure to not go to her because she's really strict and she's denying a lot of people. And literally while standing there in front of the officer and talking to him, I saw a woman behind him that was getting ready to start working that day, and she was holding a white cup of tea, and she's literally sat down at the table next to my officer. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. So I got approved. I go to New York. Here's the next crazy element of the story. So I booked a room on Airbnb. It was a room next to Central Park. It was an alright room. Also, the host was much older than me. She wasn't old, she was just much older. And it was a small room. I didn't mind it. I just wanted to be in Manhattan my first trip. And then 3 days before my flight, for some reason, I decided to go to Airbnb and just check something. I don't know why I went there. I just wanted to look at the different options again, just to see what else is available, or maybe something comes up. Because in general, I love looking at different apartments in different cities. So I'm going on Airbnb and I see there is a room that wasn't there before, looking much bigger, much lighter, with plants and everything, in a much better neighborhood for me personally, Lower East Side, which is a party Manhattan hipster area with a lot of art galleries, a lot of clubs and stuff like that. And the host has a Russian name and she looks about my age. And I was like, damn. So I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it. So I canceled that room. I lost about $100. I booked this room. Everything is amazing, great. So I'm coming here. The girl turns out to be my age. She's an actress and a model, and she works in my industry. Ollie, if you're watching this, love you. So we meet and we literally immediately become friends. So for the next 2 weeks, I had my vacation in New York. I was like having fun, exploring, meeting different people, hanging out with Olya. And literally right there, right then, I'm deciding that I'm moving to New York and not Paris. There were a few reasons for this. First of all, to get a working visa in France, you need to go through a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of papers, and you also have to speak French, which I did not at that moment. While in America, it looked a little bit easier, at least in my case. And I started quickly looking at different options. I went through like all kinds of visas, looked at all kinds of working permissions that people get to work and live here. And then someone recommended me a lawyer, and I booked an appointment with her. I had a talk with her. She told me what kinds of documents I need. And already at that moment, I was so obsessed with the idea that I'm moving to New York. So that was in August 2019. I'm going back to Moscow. The whole next year of my life was built around this goal of getting a working visa in America. So at that point, I decided that I'm going to work on O1 visa, which is a talent visa. By the way, I'm officially now called an alien with extraordinary abilities in the arts. So that was my best option because I am a fashion stylist. So I immediately started working on my portfolio or on my documents, on recommendation letters, like all that stuff that you need to get to file your case. I forgot to mention that I actually did not end up working with that first lawyer because she was like replying to my emails once in 2 weeks, and she was like just giving me like short answers like yes and that nothing else. And here comes the next miraculous coincidence of this whole story. When I decided to not work with this lawyer, my best friend Margot forwards me a message of someone who's recommending an immigration lawyer, and that person is talking specifically about O1 visa, which is the visa that I was striving for. So I was like, okay, this is just perfect. Like everything is just sliding into my hands. So I started working with her. I was collecting all the documents. Meanwhile, all the right people were coming to me literally like out of nowhere. I needed to write articles for magazines. I needed to get interviewed for magazines as well. So all of those things were just coming to me like abundantly. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And then at the same time, I was reading a lot online about like other people's experiences of getting the visa, and they were telling like crazy stories like, oh, don't even try to get this visa unless you're like a Nobel Award person, or you need to be like the most famous in the world someone to get this visa. I was like, okay, great, thank you. And then literally one day my mom and we were drinking wine in the evening, and I was like, you know what, I'm buying the ticket. And she was like, wait, maybe let's wait until the morning. I'm like, no, I'm buying the ticket right now because I just needed to have this like set in stone event that's going to bring me where I want to be. And I'm working so hard on it. I just need this indication that everything is happening actually. So I just went ahead and I bought a ticket for March 2020, like one day after my sister's birthday. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna celebrate my sister's birthday with my family and I'm gonna leave. And then in November, I quit my job in Condé Nast, and for about a couple of months I worked freelance. I went to visit my grandma in another city in Russia. Then I took my mom to Paris. It was her first trip to Paris. It was amazing. We had a lot of fun. And then in March, I packed my stuff. I packed one suitcase and I left. I didn't know when I'm gonna see my family. My family didn't know when they're gonna see me. Same with my friends. It was set in stone, but you never know with things like that. And actually about a month before my flight, something weird started happening with me. I felt like I'm like always in some kind of aquarium. Like my head is like so dizzy and foggy, and I was freaking out. I was like, what is happening with me? I have a flight in a month, but I'm like, I'm going crazy. And I literally couldn't think properly. And I went to some doctors, no one could tell me anything. And then I just left. And when I landed here, literally the same moment I passed through the customs in New York, it went away like it never was here before. And I figured I was just really freaking out that something is not gonna work. I was really scared that, I don't know, like in customs, they're gonna say something, gonna send me back. Because I read a lot of like scary stories on forums and stuff like that. And I also heard a story of someone who was like trying to move here illegally, and they came here in the summer and they had like winter clothes with them because they were planning to stay for a long time. And the customs person was like, well, excuse me, like you're here for vacation for a week, but you have like puffer coats in your suitcase, what's the deal? And then they sent him back. So I was like freaking out about all this. And actually before coming here, I texted Olia and I was like, I'm coming to New York for a long time, I don't know how long yet. And she was like, well, you're free to come and move into my second room. And I was like, yes. So I'm coming here, and then a week later, pandemic starts. Lockdown and all that stuff. My plane was one of the last planes who were allowed in the US from Russia. This is insane. Like, it's insane when I think about it. So we spent the whole pandemic with Olia together. She was managing a studio next to her apartment. So we spent all the time there. We were drinking wine, we were dancing, we were going to the beach. Everything was empty, everything was like dead. It was really crazy. But we never had a single fight. It was like we had like a year-long vacation / holiday together. Just two of us, almost just two of us. So after 3 months of staying here, I applied with the lawyer, and less than 2 weeks after that, she texted me and she said they approved, and she was even surprised how fast it was. So literally with this whole thing, every single thing worked out much better than I planned. And this is how you know you're doing the right thing. This is how you know you're on the right path. So this was the long backstory, but answering the question in the title, yes, I do believe I manifested moving to New York for several reasons. First of all, I've been kind of dreaming about New York since I was a kid, like I already said. The only thing was that I've always seen New York as like a very unreal city. Like, to me, it was a city that only existed in the movies, and also there's a stereotype in Russia that it's like impossible to go and to move to the US, and New York specifically, because it's like the city from every movie. Like, it's probably something so unattainable, and that was my vision of it. But I always still remembered about it in the back of my head, and I always knew that, okay, maybe someday I'm gonna visit New York, and I had a visualization board on my whole wall. So my manifestation basically started back when I was 12 years old. I just didn't realize it, but I also wasn't putting enough faith into it because it just seemed too impossible to me. But then once I got a sign that it's actually possible and I started working on it, it just all like jumped into my hands. Another reason I think I manifested it was when I went back to Moscow after my first visit to New York, I immediately started immersing myself in New York world. What I mean by that is I switched my phone interface into English. I rewatched all the shows that I've seen and haven't seen that were based in New York, and I watched them in English with English subtitles so that I get used to American accent and fast English speech in general, because my English was good at that moment, but it wasn't like it is right now whatsoever. It was very far from this. I wasn't really able to understand everything people would say around me. I still don't understand sometimes because there's so many accents, but still, I used to be pretty bad with speaking and so with listening. So I did that. It was like Sex and the City, Gossip Girl, like all the shows where you see New York basically in every shot. I joined all the groups on Facebook that said Russians in New York, find job in New York for Russians, anything like that. I joined every group. I did scripting a lot. If you don't know what scripting is, it's like a manifestation practice when you write down something that you really want as if it already happened or happens in the present tense. So I was writing things like, I live in New York, I work as a stylist in New York. I also put a photo that I took in New York on my lock screen on my phone. And I also was talking to a guy at that moment that I met in New York, and he texted me something in the lines of, you'll get there, everything happens in its own time. Enjoy the moment right now because your dream is coming. So I combined the picture of New York, I think it was Brooklyn Bridge, and that little text, and I put it on my lock screen on my phone, and I was looking at it basically every day. So all those things together, I believe, really boosted my confidence that it's not about if, it's about when. And literally like the last months before I moved here, I was like so struggling. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm wasting time here in Moscow. I just need to be there ASAP. I just need to be like doing things there. And it's actually very refreshing to go back into that memories, because right now I'm kind of used to New York, you know, 3 years later. I have to go back there sometimes and tell myself that that little Sasha was so determined and she was working so hard for you to be here. So please be grateful, don't take it for granted. This is the city that you've always wanted to be in. So yeah, it kind of made me want to go for a long walk and enjoy the city like I used to during lockdown, when I would just go outside, call my mom or call my friends. I would just walk without destination for like 3 or 4 hours, exploring the streets. And this is actually how I learned pretty much where everything is located in New York. This is how I learned the neighborhoods, because I walked a lot during pandemic. So by the end of pandemic, I pretty much knew where all the neighborhoods are, what they look like and everything. And that was pretty nice. And I also had very nice toned legs after that. So this is my story of me moving to New York. It's still crazy to realize that 3 years ago I came here with 1 suitcase, and I'm still here and it's all working out, and it's kind of crazy. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and let me know in the comments below if you want to know my exact strategies and techniques that I used to manifest moving here. Obviously, apart from them, you have to put a lot of hard work in. But I believe manifestation plays a huge role in all this. So let me know if you want to know more about it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!